Okay, let's begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We're going to begin with the exercises to lesson 5. So please pass what you've written to a neighbor or to your study partner if you have one. If you don't have a study partner, just pass it to the nearest neighbor. Before we begin, let's do a little bit of review. In this sentence, right, what is the first word, the verb? Ra'aytu. And that means what? I saw. After Ra'aytu, what type of a noun, forget what the word is, what type of a noun are we waiting for? Are we waiting for a subject, an object? Well, Ra'aytu has the subject, because who is the subject? It has a subject in it. I, right? I saw. So it has the subject or the fa'il within it, because it means I saw. So we know who did the seeing, and we're waiting for an object. So the word that comes after it will be an object. Maf'ul bih. What is the i'rab of an object? Mansoob. So this word will be mansoob. And how will that look in Arabic? Masajid da. Why is it masajid da? If it had been singular, right? If it had been like this, Ra'aytu masjid, how would I have said it? Masjidan. It would be mansoob, and there would be a fatha with a tanween. Why is there no tanween here? Because it's a broken plural, and this type of plural where there's two letters after the alif, it is غير منصرف or ممنوع من الصرف, which means that it does not take tanween, it will not take kasra. Right? So if I want to say fi, I will say fi masjidin, right? But if it's plural, I won't say fi masajidin. Instead, I will say fi masajid da. No tanween and no kasra. There's two exceptions to when a غير منصرف or ممنوع من الصرف noun can take kasra. We talked about it. No, feminine plural is not ممنوع من الصرف. So if it's ممنوع من الصرف, if it's like masajid, there's two instances where it can take a kasra. One is if it has alif lam. So if we give it alif lam, we'll say fil masajid di. Will we give it tanween? No, because if it has alif lam, there's no tanween. So we'll say fil masajid di. The other instance is if it is mudaf, not mudaf ilay, mudaf. Meaning if there is a possessive phrase, if it's the first word in that possessive phrase. So for example, if I say fi Masajid Ibrahim. Right? This means in the mosques of Ibrahim. Fi means that masajid is majroor. And if that's where the sentence ended, we would have said fi masajida. But because masajid is mudaf to Ibrahim, it will take a kasra. And we will say fi masajid Ibrahim. Ibrahim is mudaf ilay. Correct? Its i'rab will be majroor. So how will I say Ibrahim? Ibrahima. Not Ibrahime, not Ibrahimin. Because this does not have alif lam. It's not mudaf. So it will still take a fatha when it's majroor. So a noun that does not take fatha or kasra can take kasra if it has alif lam, or if it is mudaf, the first term in an idafa phrase, not the second term. Ibrahim is the second term, but it still does not take kasra because it's not mudaf. It's mudaf ilayh. Okay, let's take a look at the exercises. By now, all of you should have switched with a neighbor. And just like last week, we want to go through as quickly as possible. So if you don't remember the answer, or if your neighbor wrote something that you can't read, or if for whatever reason you're not able to give the answer right away, then just let us know and we'll skip you. And that way we'll be able to get through the exercises as quickly as possible. However, if there is something that you don't understand, then feel free to stop us so we can go over it. Let's begin over here as we always do. Exercise number 1, beautiful name.
Singular, Ismun Jamilun.
Ismun Jamilun. I will just write the singular unless there's a reason to write them all. And then dual.
Ismatani Jamilatani.
Alright, what I'll do is I'll write the dual and plural for the first one. Ism, you will make it dual just by adding alif nun. So, ismane, and the adjective will be jamilane. Correct? Is there any other answer you could have given that's equally correct? Ismaine, jamilaine. Right? And they're both correct. And plural. Asma'un Jamilatun. This is plural, and remember that in Arabic, if it's a plural, we treat it as feminine singular. Right? So you don't need to make the adjective plural. If the noun is a broken plural, and it's not referring to people, then the adjective will be in the feminine singular. And that's a general rule. Anybody know Surah Bayyinah? فيها كتب قيمة. In it are valuable books. Kutub is plural, but the adjective is feminine singular. Qayyimatun is the feminine of qayyimun.
So this is even in Quranic Arabic. This is the word. But if it was a person, then if it was a person in plural, we can do also like bayyina. Like in Quran, it would be.
If it were a person, then no, the adjective would be plural.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're talking about people, then it will be plural. Only if it's not referring to people. It's not a noun that refers to a man or to a woman, but to an object. Then the plural is treated as feminine singular for the purposes of adjective agreement. Okay, so we did that one in all of its forms. From now on, though, I will just write the singular so we know what the words are. You will give me this dual and the plural in the marfu' form. Next one, please, is beautiful finger.
So I do the third one.
Sure. But do you want to do the second or you want to pass?
I want to pass.
Sure. Are you ready for the second one? إصبع إصبع جميل إصبعان جميلان أصابع. This one I will write.
The fingers are masculine.
I'll get to that in a second. أصابع. Why not أصابع? It's a plural. There is an alif. There's two letters after the alif. Same as masajid. We'll say أصابع جميلة. Now we had mentioned that with certain exceptions, if you have two of a body part, then it will be feminine. So yad is feminine, correct? Ain is feminine. Udhun is feminine. There are some that are masculine, like hajib, the eyebrow, that's masculine. Hada hajibi, hadani hajiban. And there are some body parts that are treated as both. Asabi' is correct if used masculine. It's also correct if used feminine.
Do we have to add the Buddha to make it feminine?
No, not in the word, but in the adjective you will. Right? So if you want to treat it as feminine, then you will say isba'un jamilatun. And that's correct. But you will also be able to say isba'un jamilun. If you treat it as feminine, the dual will be isba'ani jamila tani. But if you treat it as masculine, it will be isba'ani jamilani. And asabi'u jamilatun will be in both cases. Whether it's masculine or feminine, the adjective jamilatun will be feminine singular. Number 3, coming back to you. Baytun, and it's a huge house, so you can say kabirun and that's fine. Wasi'un would mean a wide or spacious house. I think the book was looking for azimun, a great house or a massive house, but
There wasn't no vocabulary in this particular.
so kabir would work. I mean, the point isn't what word it is, the point is the grammatical form. So if you had said kabir, that would be fine. Azim would be fine. Wasi', which means spacious, would be fine. So baytun kabirun. Baytani kabirani. 2 huge houses or large houses. And plural? Buyutun kabiratun. The adjective will be feminine singular. Okay. Next one. A small girl. Go ahead. Bintun صغيرة. بنتان صغيرتان. And I'll write the plural. Go ahead. After you tell me. Banatun. Banatun. What's the plural of صغير? صغيرات. You can also in classical Arabic say صغار. This form صغار in classical Arabic is used for both the masculine and the feminine plural. But I believe in modern Arabic usually you will see صغيرات. Correct? Yeah. There are some plural forms that are used in classical Arabic equally for the masculine and the feminine. And kabir, plural kibar, صغير, plural صغار. That form can apply to both masculine and feminine. But if you wrote banatun صغيرات, that's also correct. It's the more common form probably in modern Arabic. And why did we say صغيرات and not صغيرة? It refers to people. Banat, girls, refers to people. All right, next one. Large spring. Ainun kabiratun. Spring here is not the season, but spring of water. Ainun kabiratun. Why kabiratun? Ain is feminine. Whether it means eye or whether it means spring, in both cases it's feminine. Ainun kabiratun. Dual. Ainane kabiratane. Uyunun kabiratun. Next one, a nearby city. Madinatun qaribatun. Madinatani qaribatani. Mudunun qaribatun. Thank you. An imminent sign. And they give you a helpful gloss that imminent, you will say near. Okay, good. Ayatun qaribatun. Ayatani qaribatani. Ayatun qaribatun. That is how you will normally see it. But it's also correct if you had said ayatun qaribatun. It's not wrong. You can say ayatun qaribatun, but it's not common. More commonly you will see ayatun qaribatun with the feminine singular. But in the Quran we do have ayatun bayyinatun with the adjective also plural, so it's not wrong. Small boy. Okay, waladun or ibnun. And you had saghirun. Ibnani saghirani. Abna'un. Okay. Abna'un. Now, does that refer to people or not? Are children humans? Yes, they are. So we will not say saghiratun, but we will treat it as a human being and we'll give a plural adjective. What's the plural of saghirun? Sigharun. The plural of saghir is sighar. Thank you. Would you like to do the next one? Skip? Okay. Next. Devoted servant. Somebody's got to do 9 for us. Who's going to do 9? Okay, so devoted servant, thank you, is abdun mukhlisun. Right? Mukhlis means sincere or devoted. Mukhlis. Dual. In the dual form. Abdani mukhlisani. And plural. Ibadun or abid. Both of them are correct. Abid or ibad. They both mean the same thing in classical Arabic. Mukhlisuna. So ibadun mukhlisuna or ibadun or abidun mukhlisun. And coming back to you for number 10, large hand. Yadun Kabi. Alright. Most of us have 2 hands, right? And if we have 2 and there's a pair, it will be treated as feminine. So we'll say Yadun Kabiratun. Correct? And Yadani Kabiratani. And it doesn't ask you for the plural. But if you did want to give the plural, or some of you did attempt it, the plural of yad is aydin. Aydin. Kabiratun. Let's just. Ayadin is also possible. Right. There are some words in Arabic that have more than one plural, and this is one of those cases. Okay, so whose turn are we on? I think 3rd row. Would you like to give the next one? Vocalize, read, and translate. So read the sentence with the proper i'rab. خلق الله آدم من طين الأرض. Translate.
God created Adam from clay.
God created Adam from the clay of the earth. Thank you. Next one. Would you like to do it? Sure. Sajada al-malaika tu. Because of the alif lam, there will be no tanween. So sajada al-malaikatu. Li'ada. Li'ada, there's a lam. It should be majroor, but Adam is one of those words that does not take kasra. Li'adama. It is majroor, but it can't take kasra. Right? In general, remember, any name that is not originally Arabic, Adam, Ibrahim, Dawood, Sulaiman, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, will not take kasra or tanween. So Adam is originally non-Arabic and it won't take tanween. So sajada al-malaikatu li Adama illa Iblisa. You didn't study why Iblisa is Iblisa, so don't worry about that. It's non-Arabic, but why? So it doesn't take tanween. But why does it have a? Why is it mansub? That's something that we'll talk about later.
Oh, it's mansub, it's not majroor?
No, it's not majroor. It's not maf'ul bihi. No, we'll talk about it later why that is. Don't worry about that. But the next sentence you do know, وَهُوَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوٌ. And what is the translation of that? Yes, all of the angels or the angels prostrated for Adam, except Iblis, and you translated who is, which is correct, but in Arabic, it's a separate sentence, right? So, and he is. I mean, it's the same sense, but a more precise translation would be, and he is لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوٌ. The normal order of that is وَهُوَ عَدُوٌ لِلْإِنسَانِ. هو subject, عَدُوٌ predicate. هو مبتدا, عَدُوٌ خبر. لِلْإِنسَانِ is explaining to us who he is the enemy of. And he is the enemy of humanity. لِلْإِنسَانِ. Because of the lam. Thank you. Next one. Aduwan. He is an enemy. Yes. So precisely, to be precise, the translation will be, and he is an enemy for humanity. Next one. Go ahead. Inna qalb al-mu'min it's the possessive phrase, so there will be a majroor. Inna qalb al-mu'mini. Inna qalb al-mu'mini. Baina will almost always be baina, and we will talk about why. Isba'aini. Min asabi'ir rahmani. And would you like to try to translate that? Indeed. The heart of a believer, Baina isba'aini, is between two fingers. Min asabi'ir rahman, out of the fingers of the most merciful God. Notice that min is a harful jar, it gives jar, so asabi' is majroor. And in this case, will asabi' take kasra or will it not take kasra? In this case it will, because it is mudaf. It is not just between the fingers or among the fingers, it is among the fingers of God. And so because it is mudaf, we will say asabi'ir rahman. Next one. أهو من المؤمنين برسول الله برسول الله. And translation?
He is among the believers in the Prophet.
If it had just been huwa, we would have translated it as a declarative sentence. He is among the believers in the Prophet of God. But when there is an at the beginning of a sentence in Arabic, it changes it to a question. That Hamza is kind of like a question mark. أَهُوَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ. And so in English it will be, is he among the believers in the messenger of God? No. Amana bihi means to believe in him. Yes. Is he among the believers in, or the believers in is the correct translation. To believe with in Arabic would be amana ma'a. Next one. Sisters. Go ahead. قلب المؤمن بيت الله. What is the mubtada in that sentence? The subject? Qalbu. And what is the khabar, the predicate? Bayt. Right? So the heart of the believer is the house of God. So we're telling you something about the heart of a believer. And we're telling you that it is the house of God. So the mubtada is qalbul mu'min. And the khabar is Baytullah. That's a complete sentence. If you need to think of it in English, qalbul mu'mini is Baytullah. The heart of a believer is the house of God. Thank you. Next one. Thank you. نزل الملائكة من السماوات بأمر الرب على قلب النبي. Translation?
The angels descended from the heavens with the command of the Lord upon the heart of the prophet.
Thank you. The angels descended from the heavens with the command of the Lord on the heart of the prophet. And as the footnote says, we'll talk about verbs, inshallah, in the next lesson. Al-malaikatu is plural, and the singular is malak, or malak. And when you write that word in Arabic, it looks like the word malik. But the word malik and malak are two different words. What does malik mean? King. And malak? Angels. So, how will I read this? Malakul Maut, not Malikul Maut. Because he's not the king of death, he's the angel of death. Malakul Maut. Next one. Whose turn is it? Pass? Back to the front. Oh, I'm sorry, in the back. Mukhlisu lillahi. Translation? Okay, this sentence is one that I want to spend just a couple seconds on. Your translation is one of two possible translations. So we have Sajada Abdu Al-Mukhlisu Lillahi. Right? Sajada means he prostrated. And who is doing the prostration? Al-Abd. Sajad al-Abdu. Al-Mukhlisu. The devoted servant. What is lillahi? To Allah, for Allah. It's li, right? For, plus the word Allah. Correct? This lillahi might refer to al-Mukhlis. Meaning, it could be al-mukhlisu lillahi. Right? In that case, we would translate it as the servant devoted to God, prostrated. The other possibility, though, is that lillahi does not go back and refer to al-mukhlis, but as you translated it, it goes and refers to sajada. Sajada al-abdul mukhlisu lillahi. The devoted servant prostrated lillahi, to God. Right? Both of those are possibilities. And that is one of the challenges that you will have in Arabic when you have a phrase like that, lillahi, or any phrase that has a harful jar, to figure out what is it referring to. Is it al-mukhlisu lillahi, devoted to God? Or is it sajada lillahi, he prostrated to God? Both of them are possible. The prostration. Sajad is not it's a verb. It's not a masdar. The masdar is sujud or sajda. The masdar, the noun form, the infinitive. So if it had been sujud or sajda, then you could have said that. Sujudul abdil mukhlis lillahi. But sajda will be a verb.
So the first one you were saying, so the servant prostrated, devoted to God?
No, devoted is an adjective describing abd, the devoted servant.
Right, so what was in the first one?
In the first one, lillahi is referring to mukhlis. His devotion is to God. The servant is devoted to God. He might have prostrated to his parents.
So,
In other words, I can say, for example, sajada li'abihi al-abdul mukhlisu lillahi. The servant devoted to God prostrated to his father. Right? It's not a very good form of devotion to God to prostrate to somebody other than God, but the point is that if lillahi refers to mukhlis, then it's not telling us who the prostration is to. It's telling us who the devotion is to. Lillahi is telling us the devotion is for God. The prostration might be for somebody else. But if lillahi refers to sajda, it's not telling us who the person is devoted to. It's telling us who the prostration is for.
But in normal Arabic sentence, what kind of devoted person would be doing something?
Well, there will always be a context that will indicate one meaning either as the exclusively right meaning or as the preferential meaning. And so you translated it, the devoted servant prostrated to God. That's one of the proper possible translations. The next sentence, though, makes it even more clear. So would you like to do the next sentence? And that's number 8. Thank you. Sajada lillahi al-abdul mukhlisu. He prostrated to God. Who? Who prostrated? The devoted servant. In this sentence it's clear. The prostration is for God. You could translate both of them the same. The reason why I mentioned that, it's not a major, big deal. The servant devoted to God prostrated, or the devoted servant prostrated to God. But the point is that you have to be aware that these phrases can refer to different things, and there might be a slight difference in the meaning depending on what it refers to. Let me give you one more example of that. Remember our friend al-yawma? That means today. In this sentence, sajada al-abdul mukhlisu al-yawma. The normal translation that any of you would think of and that you would give is the sincere servant prostrated today. So you will say that al-yawma refers to sajda. When did he prostrate? Today. But it is possible, if there is a context, right, that al-yawma can refer to mukhlis. In other words, sajada al-abdul mukhlisul yawma. The servant who was sincere today prostrated. Now, you won't translate it that way unless there is a context. But grammatically it is possible. Yes? No. No, because al-yawma is not an adjective. Right? Or sincere is not an adjective that refers to al-yawm. Right? If you want to say a sincere day, you would say al-yawm al-mukhlis. This adjective has to come after. So you have two choices. The sincere servant prostrated today, or the servant who is sincere today prostrated.
Even though that's the servant who is sincere today, the mukhlis is still describing the servant.
Mukhlis is describing servant, yes. Mukhlis is an adjective.
Happens to be-
The question though is this adverb today, is that telling us when he prostrated, or is it telling us when he was sincere? Either one is possible.
So which one is that known connected?
Which one is al-yawm connected to? We could say, sajada ams al-abdul mukhlisu al-yawm. Yesterday, the servant who is sincere today prostrated. You could say that. And the point here is simply to say that we have to be aware of what the words are referring back to. Otherwise, the context will usually be of assistance in choosing one of the meanings. Are you ready to give us the translation for number 11? All right, back to you. Number 9. أأنتم أولاد شيخ المدينة. أولاد is مضاف. Shaykh is مضاف إليه. But then Shaykh is also مضاف. And Al-Madina is mudaf ilay. Right? Remember how we can have an idafa that goes beyond one time? So, awlad of the Shaykh of the Madina. Awladu Shaykhil Madina T. Translation?
Are you the children of the Sheikh of the city?
Are you the children of the Shaykh of the city? Correct. Next one.
ذلك من أمر الله وهو
وهو خير. This is the most simple kind of sentence that you have in Arabic. A mubtada and a khabar. هو خير. And both of them will be marfu'. هو خير. Right? It is good. Don't be fooled by extra words in the sentence. Sometimes the underlying structure of the sentence is very simple. And it looks more complicated because there's additional words. Right? So if I say, هُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ might confuse you. But the basic sentence is, هُوَ خَيْرٌ. It is good. And then لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ is telling us who it is good for. خَيْرٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Good for the believers. ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. Did you translate that?
That is
That is
from the command of Allah.
from the command of God. And it is good for the believers. Thank you. So always try to strip the sentence down to its most basic elements and start from there. And that will make it easier to understand the structure. And in general, you can ignore prepositional phrases like lil mu'minina, fil madina. These kinds of sentences or words can be ignored. And now let's go through the Arabic sentences. If you can translate from English into Arabic, and I will then write the Arabic. Iblis was an enemy to Adam and Adam's wife. Kana Iblisu. Because he is the subject. Right? Kana Iblisu. Adu. One. Whenever you have kana, remember, there will be a subject, ism, and a predicate, khabar. The ism will be marfu', iblisu, and the predicate will be mansub. And you all know examples of that from the Quran. For example, Kana Allahu ghafuran rahima. Kana Allahu azizan hakima. Right? So that type of sentence, Kana Allahu, the subject will be marfu', azizan will be mansub. the khabar will be mansub. And we've gone over this before, but I'll review it because it might be helpful. If I have a simple sentence, I will say Allahu Azizun. Correct? Allahu Azizun. Mubtada, khabar. Subject, predicate. Allah is mighty. When I put it in the past tense, I will add kana. Allah was mighty. And Allah will stay Allah because it's now ism of kana. Aziz is the khabar of kana and it will become Azizan. Because kana is a verb, so it'll have one word that is marfu and one word that is mansub. So kana iblisu aduwan, an enemy to Adam. لآدم, good. وزوجتي آدم. Right? You can also say زوج آدم. And you can say وزوجته. Yes. Or وزوجه. As I mentioned earlier, zoj in modern Arabic will usually be used for a male. Zoja will be used for a female. But in the Quran itself, zoj is used for both male and female. So in the Quran, it's correct to say Adam wa zawj Adam, or li Adama wa zawjihi. But if you say that today, that'll sound odd. It'll sound like you're saying Adam and his husband. So it's more common to say li Adama wa zawjati Adam, right? Which is used for wife. But either of those answers is correct. Next sentence. Zoj literally means spouse, but soon after the Quran, not just in modern Arabic, in the newspapers today, but even in books written in Islamic history, generally zoj will be used for husband, zoja will be used for wife. And zoj is no longer used in the sense of spouse. But in the Quran, that original usage is still preserved. So in the Quran we say, Ya Adam uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah. O Adam, live you and your zoj in paradise. Nobody has changed the Quran to say, uskun anta wa zawjatuka. Or nobody has yet changed the Quran. And inshallah no one will. Number 2. The king's son went to the small cities. Whose turn is it? Is it your turn? Second row. ذهب ولد الملك إلى المدن الصغيرة. If you wrote ibn, that's correct as well. ذهب ابن الملك إلى المدن الصغيرة. ذهب ابن الملك or ولد الملك. Ibn is better. إلى المدن مدن الصغيرة. Next one. That was at the order of the king of the city. Next one. كان ذلك بأمر Malikil Madinati. Correct. The men's young wives have little children. No, because Malik is mudaf, so it cannot have mudaf. It cannot have alif lam. It's bi'amri malikil madinati. If you wrote bi'amri al-maliki, then you can't make it mudaf. You can say kana dhalika bi'amri al-maliki. That was by the order of the king. But if you want to say the king of the city, you have to say malikil madinati. A word that is mudaf cannot have alif lam. If you're going to say malikil madinati,
Because order of the king of the city,
Malik is mudaf ilay with respect to Amr, but it is also mudaf with respect to Medina. And any word that is mudaf cannot take alif lam. So, kana dhalika bi amri malikil madinati. If there was no Medina, if it had just been amril maliki, that would have been fine. You could have put alif lam here. But then, that would have to be the final word in the phrase. Alright, the men's young wives have little children. So I'm going to tackle that for us.
أزواج الرجال.
Okay. أزواج الرجال الرجال الصغير. What is this an adjective describing? The azwaj. So it'll be plural because hopefully the men's wives are human. Right? As-saghirat. Well, what is the i'rab of azwaj going to be? We want to say they have. And the form to say they have in Arabic is usually to put a lam in front of the possessor. So we'll put a lam here. Right? We'll say li azwaj al-rijali as-saghirati. They have what? Little children. Awla dun. Awladun is correct. Sigaru. Plural of saghir is sigar, masculine plural. Also it can be used for feminine. So لأزواج الرجال الصغيرات أولاد صغار. You can say نساء الرجال, yes. Young, صغير means it can mean small. Youthful is also shab, feminine shabba. Right? Shabab is the plural, which is youthful. So sometimes the translation won't be precise. It depends on what sense you are looking to convey. Number 5. The girl's 2 hands are small. And 2, obviously you don't need to use the number 2 in Arabic because there's a form for it. So we have al-bint and we have small. Saghiratani. This, I'll agree with you. How will we say the girl's hands? Remember, in Arabic, how does the order work? Always convert the English phrase to a phrase with of, if you want to get the order. So the girl's hands is the hands of the girl, right? Yada al-bint. Yada al-bint. Right? It was yadani. Correct? Yadani is the two hands. But then when we make an idafa phrase,
Can you say as-saghiratan?
well, let's correct the sentence first. Yadani will become yada when it's mudaf. Al-binti. Right? And then we want to say are small. Saghiratani. Two hands. If you say as-saghiratani, then it will be taken to be an adjective. Yada al-binti as-saghiratani. This will be an adjective describing the two hands. The two small hands of the girl. And then we'll be waiting for the rest of the sentence. What about them? Yes. You can say yada al-binti, you can say hiya saghiratani as well. Huma saghiratani. Number 6. The angel brought down the book from heaven. Whose turn is it? Pass? Alright. Do you want to do the next one? Pass? Okay. Pass as well? Go ahead. Okay, so we start with the verb. Nazala. Yes. The angel. Al-malaku. Al-kitab. Min as-sama. Min as-sama'i. The word nazala in Arabic means to come down, to descend. You can say anzala al-malaku al-kitaba. You can say nazzala al-malaku al-kitaba. Or you can use the same word nazala, but you can add that phrase, that harf bi. And you'll say bil kitab. He came down with it. He came down with it, or he brought it down.
So naz with the shadda is brought.
Nazzala, he brought. Anzala, he brought. Nazala by itself is he came down. But if you add a ba to the object, then it conveys the same meaning. Nazala al-malaku bil-kitabi min as-sama'i. The angel brought down the book, or came down with the book from heaven. Min as-samawati is also good. Min al-jannati is also possible. But it doesn't really convey the same meaning, because that would specifically mean paradise rather than from the sky. These are old men and we are young. Next. These are old men. They are old men. Hum rijalun kibarun. Right? They are old men and we are young. وَنَحْنُ صِغَارٌ. Or you could say shabab. You could also choose another adjective for kibar, depending on what sense you're trying to convey. So that's not important. Yes. No, you won't. You will not say ar-rijal, because hum is the subject and rijalun is the predicate, mubtada and khabar. So the khabar will usually be an indefinite noun. Hum rijalun, they are men. Kibarun, who are advanced in age. Wa nahnu sigarun, and we are young. Yes? Shuyukh? You can use shuyukh. Shuyukh is a noun and not an adjective though. So you can say hum shuyukhun. In that case, that one word can take the place of the noun and an adjective. And shuyukh, the word shaykh, has different meanings. Its original meaning is an old man. But of course it has different connotations in modern Arabic and in different contexts. But one of the meanings of shaykh, plural shuyukh, is an old man. Next sentence, she is the king's daughter, and I am an enemy to the king. Good. هي بنت الملكي بنت الملكي وأنا عدو, correct, to the king, للملكي. وأنا عدو للملكي. No, the Arabic pronoun is ana. I is ana. وأنا عدو للملكي. Right? I didn't say عدو الملكي because that would mean I am the enemy of the king. But here we want to say I am one of the enemies. I am an enemy. Are you from among the men of the cities near here? Whose turn is it? Yes? Go ahead. From among the men. So أنتم من رجالي. It's cities. Plural is المدن. أنتم من رجال المدن near here. القريبة من هنا. أنتم, if it's plural, chances are it might also be singular, so it could be أنت. أنت من رجال المدن القريبة من هنا. Are you from among the men of the cities near here? And the elder of the city has 2 beautiful large gardens. Go ahead. Whose turn is that? Are we going this way? So go ahead, sister. للشيخ المدينة حديقتان كبيرتان. Yes. لشيخ المدينة حديقتان كبيرتان جميلتان or جميلتان كبيرتان. The order does not matter. Why is it حديقتان and not حديقتين? Well, حديقتان and حديقتين are both dual. And they're both feminine. حديقتان is مرفوع. حديقتين is mansub or majrur. So why is it marfu? Think of this whole thing as the subject of the sentence, mubtada. And this is the khabar. I am telling you something about the two large beautiful gardens. What am I telling you about two large beautiful gardens? I'm telling you that they belong to the city elder. The city elder is a member of the 1% and he owns the two large gardens. حديقتان كبيرتان جميلتان. Two large gardens. Beautiful, two large beautiful gardens. That is the subject. So it's marfu'. لشيخ المدينة. Belong to the elder of the city. If it's a khabar and khabar, or if it's a mubtada, it will be marfu. Both of them are marfu. Hadiqatani. Yes. Sister, do you have a question as well? You can add a wa. Hadiqatani, kabiratani, wa jamilatani. But normally between adjectives you don't need to have a wa. So you can say kabiratani, jamilatani. Alright, if you remember last week, we had humbly requested all of you to memorize and be able to recite at breakneck speed the list of pronouns. So who is ready to do so? And let's have, all the way in the back, can you volunteer for that? Without reading. Huwa, huma, hum. Hiya, huma, hunna. Thank you. And who's going to do the second person for us? Muhammad?
Anta, antuma, antum, anti, antuma, antunna.
And the first person? Ana, nahnu. Good. Memorize those pronouns because they will come in handy. And also when we get to verbs, that is very similar to how verbs are conjugated. So it'll be useful to you. Notice that the word hum and antum end in sukoon. In some cases, we will have to add a harakah to those two vowels. And we will add a harakah when the word after them also has a sukoon. In Arabic, you can never have two sukoons in a row. So if we need to add a harakah, then we will add a dhamma. So for example, hum, and then this word al-adu. Right? They are the enemy. Hum ends in a sukoon. Al-adu starts with a sukoon. Right? The alif is not pronounced. So we have hum al-adu. Can we ever have that in Arabic? Never two sukoons in a row. Normally, we add a kasra. But with the word hum or antum, we won't say, we won't add a kasra, we'll add a dhamma. Humul adu.
The default on most words is a kasra.
Antumul adu. Most words, though, the default is to add a kasra. But just make a note of that. All of you will see examples of that in the Quran and elsewhere. Okay, let's take a look at some of the examples at on the next page. قل هو الله أحد. He is Allah, the One. هو بكل شيء عليم. إذ هما في الغار. What does that mean? هما في الغار. هما. The two of them were in the cave. Ghar is the cave. When the two of them were in the cave, إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا. When he said to his companion, stop fretting, God is with us. Huma, the two of them. يريدون أن يخرجوا من النار وما هم بخارجين. ما هم, they are not. ما هم بخارجين. They are not going to exit. خارجين, to exit. إن هي إلا حياتنا. Now, in here is negation. So, in hiya illa hayatuna is like saying ma hiya illa hayatuna. It is not except hayatuna dunya, our present life. Hiya, in this case, means it, right? Referring to life. Remember that. In Arabic, there is no separate word for it. Huwa or hiya can mean he or she, or either of them can mean it, depending on what noun it is referring to. وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَبْعُوثِينَ. We will not be mab'uth, sent forth from our graves. We will not be resurrected from our graves. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. Translation? Hunna. They are a clothing for you. وَأَنْتُمْ. You are a clothing for them. And it's a Quranic verse referring to marriage. That just as clothing protects you and adorns you, marriage is meant to protect and to adorn both partners. It's a mutual relationship. Hunna lakum wa antum lahunna. They for you and you for them. Innaka anta allamul ghuyub. Anta, you, allamul ghuyub, are the knower of the unseen. If there's new vocabulary and if there's some grammatical structures that are unfamiliar, then don't be worried about that. The point right now is to look at the pronouns, and we will cover all of that grammar. The next one towards the end. لا يصلون إليكما أنتما. Yes, they will not. لا يصلون إليكما. They will not come to you بآياتنا. أنتما ومن اتبعكما الغالبون. You, the two of you, ومن اتبعكما, and those who follow you, الغالبون, are those who will overcome. The sentence ends at بآياتنا, and then the next sentence begins. أنتما ومن اتبعكما الغالبون. The two of you, وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَكُمَا, and those who follow you, الْغَالِبُونَ, are the ones who will overcome. وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Antum means? No. All of you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ. God knows. وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And all of you don't know. أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. I am your greatest Lord. وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُخْلِصُونَ. And we are devoted to Him. Or we are to Him devoted. That lahu actually could come after mukhlisun. Nahnu mukhlisuna lahu. It's the normal order that you would expect. One of the functions of these pronouns is that in a sentence, if both the subject and the predicate have alif lam, or if they are both definite, we can add a pronoun to separate the two. Right? So if I say Abuka alimun, right? What does that mean? Your father is a scholar or a scientist or an alim, right? Abuka alim. Your father is a scholar. If I say Abuka al-alimu, then you would think that this is an adjective describing Abuka, your father the scholar, right? Abuka al-alimu, your father the scholar. And that's possible. I can say Abuka al-alimu fil madrasa. Your father the scholar is in the school. But what if I don't want to say something about your father the scholar? What if I want to say your father is the scholar? Yeah, if I just say Abuka al-alimu, it would be confusing because you'd think this is an adjective. So what I can do is I can squeeze in a huwa to separate the two. The sentence will become Abuka huwa al-alimu. And now we know Abuka is the subject, al-alimu is the khabar, the predicate. Abuka huwa al-alimu. Your father is the alim. Another example. أولئك المفلحون. Now, what does muflihun mean? Those who will succeed, right? The successful. This could mean those successful ones, or it could mean أولئك subject, al-muflihun predicate. They are the successful ones. How do I know which one? If I add a hum, أولئك هم المفلحون, then I know. أولئك is mubtada, al-muflihun is khabar. If I didn't have that hum, I would be confused. Am I saying أولئك المفلحون, those successful ones are such and such, are happy, sad, praying, whatever? Or am I saying they are the successful ones? So do you see how that hum, that pronoun, can clear up the confusion? Right? So we have some examples here. Muhammadun huwa an-nabi. That sentence means Muhammad is the prophet. If I had just said Muhammadun an-nabi, it could have meant Muhammad is the prophet, or it could have meant Muhammad the prophet, blank, blank, blank. Said something, did something.
If you want to say Muhammad is the prophet, you'll always write huwa.
You will generally add huwa.
You'll always see that.
You will see that. And the pronoun will correspond to the subject. So if it's Muhammad huwa nabi, Fatimatu hiya bintun nabi, the daughter of the Prophet. Right? So I can say Fatimatu Zahra, Fatima the radiant, or I can say Fatimatu hiya Zahra, Fatima is the radiant. Right? The pronoun is there to separate the subject from the predicate. Inna hudallahi huwal huda. Verily, the guidance of God is the guidance. Inna shani'aka huwal abtar. Verily, your enemy is the one cut off. So if you see an extra pronoun in a sentence, then you know what the function will be.
So when you're like translating that, you don't actually, you just say verily your enemy is cut off.
Your enemy is the one cut off, because it's definite.
Right.
So your enemy is the cut off one. Okay, take the next packet of notes for lesson number 6, and we'll begin with that. With this packet, we're going to begin to look at verbs, and verbs in Arabic are based on a root letter, and that root letter is very important because all of the meanings and the different forms of a word will be derived from a certain root letter. That root letter is known as al-asl or al-madda, or in modern Arabic they will sometimes call it al-jadr. Al-jadr. Right, so al-asl, al-madda, al-jadr. Classically, grammarians would call it al-asl, the root. And many different words are related by their root. So if you take, all of you have probably seen examples. This root, Ain, Lam, Mim. Right, let's just quickly take a look at all of the words that we can think of that share this root. What are some? Ilm, Alim, Ulama, Alim, Ma'lum, Alama, Muallim. Not Muamala. Ta'lim, I'lam, Ta'allum. Right? Ta'lamun in verb forms. Huh? Muallim we have. Alam. Isti'lam. You get the point? Allama. No, we said alama. Allama. Right? And so you can think of many words. All of these, they share this root letter. And these root letters, they have the sense of knowledge. So all of those derived forms will have something to do with knowledge. One who knows a great deal. Knowledge. A person who has knowledge. People who have knowledge. One who has a great deal of knowledge. Known. Sign. Teacher. Teaching. Giving knowledge. Trying to find out knowledge. Learning. and a flag, which gives you knowledge of whatever it's a flag or a sign of. Right? So that root is very important, and if you know the root and the meaning of the root, you can guess the meaning of many different words all at once. That root will take different patterns, and the pattern will be known as wazn, plural, awzan. And so some patterns will be shared. Right? This pattern, maf'ul, denotes something to which something is done. Ma'loom, that which is known. Maqtul, the one who is killed. Maktub, the one that is written, or the thing that is written. Ma'kul, the thing that is eaten. Notice how all of them, they share the same pattern, or the same wazn. Maf'ul, the one to which something is done. So Arabic words will have a pattern, and they will have a root letter. And in general, when we want to describe the root letter, we don't just write the letter, we describe it in the form of a verb. So, for example, shakara is a past tense verb. Shakara. Because the first form of the verb, it just has the root letters in it. Shakara, he showed gratitude. Sami'a, he heard. Alima, he knew. Sharufa, he was noble. Karuma, he was generous. Qala, he said. Wajada, he found. Da'a, he prayed. That verb will be how we generally describe the root letters of a word. Yes. Da'a means he supplicated, or he prayed, or he called, or he invited. It has several different meanings. Yes. The root will usually consist of 3 letters. There are some roots that have 4 letters. There are some roots that have 5 letters. And there are some roots that seem to have 2 letters. Right? But in general, the vast majority of roots are of 3 letters.
But even those 5 and 4 aren't they really 3 letters?
No, not in all cases. In some cases, we do have 4 root letters. Common patterns for verbs, you will see that the infinitive will sometimes be on the pattern fa'al, like fath, opening, qatl, killing, nasr, victory or triumphing or helping. Sometimes fu'ul, like khuruj, exiting, bulugh, reaching, rukub, riding, sujud, prostrating. And there are many other forms that are found for verbs. When you want to describe a verb or a word and its pattern, this word fa'ala, it's kind of treated as a general pattern. And so I will say the first letter corresponds to the fa, the second letter corresponds to the ain, the third letter corresponds to the lam. So if I'm talking about any other verb or any other word, I will say the fa of that word, meaning the first letter, the ain of that word, meaning the second letter, or the lam of that word, meaning the third letter. Right? And that's shared because it goes back to the pattern. So for example, I can say maqtul, right? The root letters are qa, ta, la, Qa is the first letter, or fa. Ta is the second letter, or ain. And lam is the third letter, or lam. And the same thing with maktub. I can say kaf is the fa'ul fi'l, ta is the ainul fi'l, and ba is the lamul fi'l. And that lets me say that in both of these cases, the ainul fi'l has a dhamma. Maktub. Maktub. Right, so that's just a way to refer to the pattern. The ainul fi'l, the middle word, has a dhamma. We'll talk about the grammar of verbs coming up. So don't jump the gun on that, because there's a little bit of detail involved in how verbs are treated grammatically. Now, verbs are of different types. This chart is there for review and to make it easier for you. So don't worry if all of the detail is not easy for you to remember. There are some words, there are some letters in the Arabic language that are considered to be weak letters. Right? Those are the letters alif, waw, and ya. Right? And alif itself is usually converted from a waw or a ya. These are weak letters. They're kind of half consonants, half vowels. Hamza is not one of them. So Hamza is its own category. Some verbs do not have any weak letters, like in the word daraba. All good strong letters. Those are the easiest verbs to conjugate, right? They follow a set pattern. Sometimes there is a verb that has a hamza, but still no weak letter, like akala. Hamza is the first letter. Sa'ala or la'uma. There is a hamza in the second letter. Or bada'a, a hamza in the third letter. Do not confuse alif and hamza. We have two different words in Arabic. One is bada and one is bada'a. They are two different words. Bada'a means it began. Bada means it showed. Similarly, we have one word sala and one word sa'ala. Sa'ala, he asked. Sala, it flowed. Right? The word sail, a flood or flowing. Is from Sala. So there's a difference between alif and hamza. In bada'a, there is a hamza at the end. In bada, there is an alif at the end. If a word has a weak letter in it, then the weak letter can either be the first letter, like in wajada, or the weak letter can be the second letter, like qala, or the weak letter can be the third letter, like masha. Third, second, or first. And all of them have their own rules. And then there are some verbs that have a doubled letter. Marra, he passed. Or madda, he extended. And because I want to leave you with something that you can memorize for next week. I want to continue until we get to the basic forms of the past tense verb. So, if you look at the chart at the bottom of the page 2, it tells you that within past tense verbs, there are certain predictable forms that you will see. The first letter, fa'ul fi'l, will always have a fatha. The third letter, lamul fi'l, will always have a fatha. The second letter can vary. And how many variations are there possibly? 3. Fatha, dhamma, or kasra. So in the past tense, a verb's variation will only be based on ainul fi'l, the middle letter. And that middle letter will either have a fatha, like nazala, right? Fatha. Or it will have a kasra, like alima, alima. Or it will have a dhamma, like sharufa. Notice that the fa'ul fi'l and the lamul fi'l in all 3 cases has a fatha. It's only the ainul fi'l, the middle letter, that can vary. Sharufa, alima, nazala. Whatever that form is, that will be there in all of the forms of the verb. So whether I say he came down, or she came down, or I came down, if it's a fatha on the second letter, it will always be a fatha. If it's a kasra, it will always be a kasra. If it's a dhamma, it will always be a dhamma.
So there's only like alama, there's never alama.
There is never going to be alama. It will be alima. There are some verbs that do come on more than one pattern, but it's an exception to the rule. In general, every verb will have one pattern that it's used for. Daraba is daraba, not dariba, not daruba. Nasara is nasara, not nasura or nasira. Right? And amila, to do, is amila, not amala or amula. Sharufa is always going to be sharufa. And if you flip the page, it gives you the conjugation of the verb. If you memorize this pattern, fa'ala, then you will be able to conjugate every verb by plugging its letters into the same pattern. So if I know it's fa'ala, then I can say kataban, nasara, masha, many other verbs. And even some verbs that are a little bit exceptions to the rule. I can even plug in verbs that have a different vowel on the middle letter. So for example, fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, alima, alima, alimu. It's just the second letter will be different. Or sharufa, sharufa, sharufu. The second letter will be different. So memorize this pattern. And the way this chart works is the top row is the third person masculine. Below that is the third person feminine. Then below that is the second person masculine. Below that is the second person feminine. And then below that is the first person. And first person does not have a masculine or feminine, it's all the same. And the chart goes from right to left. The right form, the right column is singular. The middle column is dual. The left column is plural. So if you look at the chart, I'm going to start from the top right, and I'm going to go to the left, and then I'll come down to the next row. Fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu. And that's he, they, and 3 or more of them men. Fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna. She, those 2 women, all of those women. Fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum. You 1 man, you 2 men, you plural men. Fa'alti, fa'altuma, fa'altunna. You 1 woman, 2 women, and then all of you women. fa'altu, I, fa'alna, we. And whatever the verb is. So if it's fa'ala, it means did. If it's kataba, it means wrote. If it's alima, it means know or knew. The same pattern. So I can plug in alima, and it will, instead of be fa'ala, it will be alima. Alima, alimu. Alimat, alimata, alimna. Alimta, alimtuma, alimtum, alimti, alimtuma, alimtunna, alimtu, alimna. It's only 14 forms to memorize. It's not a terribly large amount until you get to all of the others. But we're not worrying about all the others right now. We're only worrying about the past tense. And if you memorize fa'ala, then it will become easier to memorize or to plug in any other verb. So next week, all of you should be able to come in and quickly say fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna, fa'alti, fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum, fa'alti, fa'altuma, fa'altunna, fa'altu, fa'alna. Quickly, like that, making the same mistake that I did. You're allowed one quick mistake, and if you can correct yourself, then it won't be counted against you. But if you can do it that way, then other verbs that you will plug in will become easier. And then even the exceptions to the rule, you'll be able to figure them out just by comparing them to that original pattern. So memorize fa'ala as it is on the chart and look at how it's changing to get to a different form. Question? Can we get candy if you get it really fast? We will we'll all admire you, congratulate you, and not make fun of you if you say it fast and correctly. Right? There are some of the forms of the verb that look very similar. Be aware of that. So for example, this form right here, it's circled, it could be fa'alta, it could be fa'alti, it could be fa'alat, it could be fa'altu. Meaning the way it's written right now, it could be she did, it could be you masculine did, it could be you feminine did, or it could be I did. Depending on if it's fa'alat, fa'alta, fa'alti, or fa'altu. But all of them are pronounced differently. So do take a look at each of those forms. And it's not just important to memorize them, but to know what each one is. So fa'altuma, the two of you did. Fa'alu, 3 or more men, they did. Fa'altunna, all of you women did. And if I know fa'altunna, I can say katabtunna, all of you women wrote. Qataltunna, all of you women killed. Darabtunna, all of you women hit. Amiltunna, all of you women did. Sharuftunna, all of you women were noble. Right? And so on and so forth. Because just the first part of the verb will change, the pattern will be the same. And
how did people differentiate when they write this word in?
It's context. There's no differentiation in writing. Sometimes you can say, fa'altu if you want, but normally that is not going to be written. So you have to know from context. If it's confusing, then sometimes you will see them write, for example, fa'altu ana. And that ana will clarify for you that it's fa'altu. Because ana means I. So naturally that will tell us what the verb is. And with that we can conclude for today. Please recite salawat.